Hello, welcome to the Game Mess Game Club. This time we are assembled to talk about Indiana Jones and the Fantastic Circle. Wait, no, that's what Jeff calls it. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Um, yep. So we played a very new game this time for the Game Club, which is kind of a fun little change of pace here. I think a lot of us looking forward to it, and it was on Game Pass, so just kind of made sense this time around. If you want to join the Game Mess Game Club, you can by just being a member of the Game Mess Patreon or by being a subscriber to me, twitch.tv/ Tokoto. Both of those things will give you access to our special Discord channels, which includes the Game Mess Game Club, where you can vote on future games and join discussions like this, or just text discussions in the channel. All right. So we got a healthy amount of people in here. I'm excited. I think kind of the first fun question here is kind of a fun thing to hear from people. Is how much did you care about Indiana Jones before going into this? I was kind of been fascinated with both this and Dial of Destiny, hearing a good amount of people being like, I never really cared about Indiana Jones, especially people who are are younger, aren't white, things like that. I'm like, oh no, is Indiana Jones kind of just an old white man thing? Go ahead, Shawn.
Hi, yes, I'm young and only mostly white. And contrary to what you guys have said on the Bombcast, I do really like Indiana Jones. I grew up loving Raiders of the Lost Ark. Temple of Doom was interesting, maybe a little more problematic. And then the third one I haven't watched as much, but Raiders in particular, I just think is an all-time classic movie. And so, I was really looking forward to playing this game. Because, first of all, Machine Games, which I love Wolfenstein, they're Wolfenstein. So I was looking forward to the gameplay, but also just, the setting. And it seems like such a no-brainer. There's been so many games that have taken the Indy formula, and, Tomb Raider, Uncharted, and ran within different directions. It was great to see maybe something similar to those styles, but with the OG himself. So, I was super looking forward to this and have a lot to say. I'm excited that we're doing this tonight.
Fantastic. Adam, how about you?
I have been mildly into Indiana Jones throughout most of my life. I've played more Indiana Jones video games than I've seen movies. I've seen Raiders, but the 3D 90s-ish games, Infernal Machine and Emperor's Tomb, played a bunch of those. Really remember enjoying those. I'm also a huge Uncharted fan. So I was excited for this game, hoping it could fill some of those holes in my heart.
And Jedi Moss, how about you?
Yeah, definitely probably leans more into the older white man crowd. 'Cause I definitely grew up loving these movies. Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's a all-time classic. The sequels were varying degrees of good, and like a lot of people, I have not actually seen Dial of Destiny. I only went up to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and well, that thing definitely exists. It's a movie, so. I have not really played any other Indiana Jones games. This is kind of the first Indiana Jones video game I've ever played, and I'm also generally a fan of machine games and love the Wolfenstein games. And so when I heard they were going to do it, I was like, "Hey, that sounds like a good choice." And so I was looking forward to this.
Faye, go ahead.
Yeah, so as a white guy in his mid 30s, I grew up loving Indiana Jones. This is probably the first. This is the first Indiana Jones game I think I've played to completion. I've dabbled with the other ones, but never really finished them all the way through. But I was super excited with just from the lineage from coming from the Riddick games over to Machine Games. Those people worked on that too, so super excited. But yeah, I loved Indiana Jones up until Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I tried to forget about that exists. I thought Dial of Destiny was a much better movie, but we'll put Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and never talk about it again.
Alrighty. And as for myself, I like Indiana Jones quite a good deal. I enjoy all of the original trilogy movies. The two newer ones are bad and then okay. But then there's been some sort of auxiliary Indiana Jones media that I've enjoyed a lot. I'm a big fan of the ride in Disneyland, which got a little shout out very early on in the game. I was excited about that. Game wise, a lot of them never really worked for me, but I love Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, the point and click adventure game from the 90s that LucasArts did. That one is also a ton of fun. But yeah, this is kind of like the really first big swing at this the kind of AAA Indiana Jones video game in an era where we don't really get a lot of those for franchises that aren't things like Star Wars anymore. So I guess kind of my first big question about this game is what do you think of the overall approach? Because there's so many different things you can do with Indiana Jones. I think a lot of people might have just assumed you make an Uncharted clone or you make a Tomb Raider clone. I for one appreciated the kind of different approach that they took here. Something that feels very Indiana Jones. It's always kind of hard to explain what the game is. It's kind of an immersive sim. It's kind of a action game, puzzle game, exploration games, a lot of different things. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I was not loving this game early on. Um, like I said, big Uncharted fan. I don't know why I was expecting this to be anything close to that. But it was very Bethesda-y, obviously, made by Bethesda. Um, and pretty slow early on, but you're right. This game is kind of its own thing. It's not Uncharted. It's not even like other Bethesda games. I thought it was. It's just this really cool little collection of these Indiana Jones sandboxes that you just get to poke around and do really cool things. And so, yeah, I love the approach.
Sean, go ahead. I think you had a similar experience with the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, me, Adam, I know Jeff feels the same way about this. Of the beginning of the game, I thought was just dreadfully slow and boring when you're going through the Vatican, and after that was Giza, and what I realized was it wasn't necessarily the game as a whole; it was the open areas. They weren't doing anything for me because on the off chance you haven't played much of the game and you're listening to this, the game is divided between, these not open world, but sort of like open-ish segments.
Open zones like Sonic the Hedgehog invented.
Like, it's fine because I'm playing Sonic Frontiers. I'm like, oh, hey, you know what? This structure feels a little familiar. But I didn't expect it to be Uncharted. But because, that's not really Indy, the style. Indiana Jones' style necessarily, because Nathan Drake just mass murderer. But I was hoping it was a little more Tomb Raider. I wish it was a little bit more about literally exploring the various sites that Indy goes to see. And when the game is doing that, I like that a lot. But like you said, there's a lot of immersive sim stuff, a lot of like sneaking around, a lot of like infiltrating camps and stuff, the kind of stuff that maybe you would get in an open world game just on a much smaller scale here. And I don't think the game pulls that off very well, but it also meant that I liked the game more as it went on because they did less and less of that as the game went on. So weirdly, I think this is a game that has like a really, really rough start, but progressively gets better. And by the end of it, I was really enjoying it. And some of the set pieces are fantastic. And it's a very interesting experience overall, definitely.
Yeah, and I think I've heard a lot of people say that they kind of like the game more as they go on through it. I think I'm a little bit unique in that I was kind of flat and I liked the game a lot, basically. But I kind of was there in the beginning and sort of went through it feeling that same way. Although, like, they definitely do change things up as the game goes along. That's part of what I liked. Like, Gaza has a very different feel than the second area. Oh, excuse me. The Vatican has a different feel than Gaza, and that is a different feel from the third area. And then you have these kind of linear
I'm
sections
so
in
sorry,
between.
but Giza, very different from Gaza. I'm sorry, I need to cut that one
you
off
know
at
what?
the pass.
The news got into me there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
get you.
my bad. I said that. I'm like, that's not right. That's not right. Thank you, Sean. Jedi Moss, would you please talk instead?
Okay. So Yeah, and just to add on to what everyone said, which I basically agree with. Although I am also kind of like you, I was digging the game even with the first parts of the Vatican. I think what really helps with that is how authentic of an indie experience it really is, because as someone mentioned here, it's people I don't think maybe they should just do Uncharted, but like Indiana Jones isn't really a killer. He's never been that type of action hero. He's much more of a guy who is kind of slinking around and grabbing whatever objects he finds, like knocking people out, because he's not really interested in killing people. He's just trying to get a thing, either some sort of MacGuffin or some sort of artifact or what have you. And so they built a game that was like that. And it's so interesting because machine games, their last games were very much like big, um, start and stop action games from beginning to end, and you're just going around mowing down, killing as many Nazis as possible. But not with Indiana Jones. In many ways, it feels like an inverse of Wolfenstein, where like you're not really killing people. Um, and so I found that very surprising, and I still ended up really enjoying it because I thought it. The actual systems themselves aren't doing anything unique. It's all kind of stuff we've seen earlier, but coming together as a whole, it feels like an authentic Indiana Jones experience.
Excuse me. Yeah, I for one am really glad that it wasn't just a first-person shooter or something like that. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, Uncharted is definitely Indiana Jones in spirit, but not body count. Just quickly back to the open zones and the Vatican level. I think my problem with that level, I love that level, but I think it was a bad opening level. I think it was really hard to navigate, especially with a map that's like kind of designed to fight you. It wasn't until the Egypt level until like, okay, everything's nice and open here, and the systems really started to click, and the whole thing started to work for me.
Yeah, gotcha. How about you, Inufe?
Yeah, I think the game definitely started a little slow in the Vatican. I still didn't enjoy kind of sulking around. That's kind of when it felt the most like the Chronicles of Riddick games that a lot of this X Starbreeze people worked on. When you're kind of poking around and you're not really just guns a blazing, and though you never really get to that point. But I'm glad I pushed through. I think I heard Jeff say at some point that, he really picked it up because I was about to drop it during the Vatican parts where I was like, this is really, really slow. Like nothing was really happening. And I'm glad I pushed on and continued through because it definitely wraps up and becomes an excellent game, I think, by the end.
Let's talk about the fisting. I mean, the combat. Because this is another thing where I hear different opinions about. I, for one, really enjoyed that first person fighting that's in this game. I think that the punches felt very punchy. I liked just kind of picking up items around you, and they sort of have a short durability, so you can use them and throw them around. The way you can kind of grab enemies and throw them and use your whip. Again, it was a very unique combat system, right? It's not just something lifted from another game, which may have been an easier thing there, but maybe that also may have made it a bit more comfortable for other people. Go ahead, Wee Demon.
Yeah, I found the first person melee combat to be pretty underwhelming. I thought it was very shallow and got pretty repetitive. It is it's pretty satisfying to whack a Nazi with a frying pan, but that's kind of all there was to it. You just grab something and you hit them. The shooting wasn't particularly great either. Although I do appreciate that you could just flip around any gun and whack someone with it.
The one thing like, the shooting itself doesn't maybe feel great. I do like how the game discourages you from using it. And when I do use it, it does literally feel like that moment from Raiders of the Lost Ark with the big guy with the sword. I'm like, I'm not fighting you like that. I'll just shoot you and I move along. Go ahead, Shawn. There's some good fisting.
Well, contrary to what past Mike thinks, yeah, I think combat, this is like my one real negative, like straight up of the game. I think the combat's just bad. Anytime I had to like interact with enemies face on, I was not having a fun time. I like the sneaking around a lot. I think the stealth actually works very well. And like the iconic Weed Demon just said, I love that you can like flip a gun around and suddenly it's a melee weapon with durability. You could just use it like any other melee weapon to knock someone out silently. That is all very fun. But the second that shit goes sideways and you need to like actually get in, a fist fight with someone, it is very simple. It is kind of just mash right trigger until your stamina's down, back off for a second, do the same on the next enemy and rinse and repeat. And then with shooting is something that I've mentioned elsewhere that I found very frustrating is that enemies are kind of bullet sponges. Like if I shoot someone in the face in a game with a gun, they should die. As simple as that. And the fact that that wasn't happening was driving me insane because it meant that I couldn't really even like, obviously you're using pistols, you're not using like silenced weapons and stuff, but the fact that I couldn't even sort of stealthily use a gun at all, that was annoying too. Yeah, I just really did not like the combat in this game, unfortunately.
All right, Jedi Moss, somebody else has got to like the combat in this game. Is it you?
I do like the combat in this game, actually.
Okay.
I think about the fist fights is like, yeah, it's not the most in-depth system in the world, but also most fist fights end after like a few seconds. That's the thing about fist fights is that it only takes a few seconds realistically to actually bring someone down. And so for me, it's like, oh yeah, you just you wail on a guy for a few seconds, and eventually he's gonna knock himself down. So as maybe sometimes as obtuse as the fist fights are, they're so fast, they're so quick that I never really feel like it's really dragging down the pacing of the game. And so even brute forcing it, I feel like is almost intentional. And then with the thing about the shooting too is the shooting is okay. I thought the shooting is fine, but again, the game is very much telling you not really to shoot. Like I think I maybe used my pistol maybe 3, maybe 4 times throughout the entire game. It's not that game. They're not really telling you to use the shooting all that much. It's meant to be a sort of break glass in case of emergency situation. So I thought, as shallow as maybe the combat can be, I thought it was handled well within the context of what the game was trying to do.
Adam, go ahead.
I thought it was not bad. I thought the combat was very representative of what a silly little Indiana Jones fist fight usually looks like, with everyone standing around and comedically slow punches being thrown. So I enjoyed that.
Inufe, go ahead.
Kind of agree with everything everybody else has said, and I think the combat is serviceable and it works well enough. Although the gunplay was strangely not very good from the people who made Wolfenstein. I think the one thing I want to call I think was very good was all of the Foley work when you punch people is very good. Also, when you hit all the Nazis with weapons and they comedically spin around and then fall over, was also a very good touch. It was very. I think there was a lot of unintentional comedic moments. I think, or maybe they were intentional.
No, yeah, exactly. Like just those are some examples of them kind of nailing the Indiana Jonesness of this, which we'll probably get into soon. But Shawn, a retort?
I actually just wanted to shout out something that someone said in the chat. Shouts to Lance for bringing this up. That the combat does, regardless of how you feel, I think we can all agree it does end up feeling distinctly Indiana Jones. It very much feels like they point out, Indy does kind of get his ass handed to him in the movies. And so he's not a particularly good fighter. And I think that's sort of the dilemma. Something I've been thinking about in a few different games recently about how intent does not always equal quality. Like sometimes they have a vision for something. I think the vision works out to being what they want it to be. But does that make for a good game experience? And I think that's a lot of the things in this game come back to, this feels like such an authentic Indiana Jones experience, but does it feel like a good video game experience? And I think that's why there's a wide variety of opinions on this game and the various aspects, is because some people don't like the pacing, some people won't like the combat, and this, that, and the other. It is what I think makes the game interesting again.
I thought when you were going to shout somebody from the chat, it was going to be Dibbity Dab saying, I have never died by being shot in the face. Checkmate, Sean.
That is good too. So shout outs to
Yeah.
them as well.
Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, they clearly had a mission statement here to be, like you say, Sean, just authentic to Indiana Jones in every possible way they could think of. The game I kept thinking of was actually Rogue Leader, because I think it's this game and it's Rogue Leaders as far as a list of Lucasfilm games that just absolutely nail the entire vibe of what those original movies are.
So another kind of big aspect of the game is doing some more of the archaeology stuff. Kind of the tomb raiding s stuff where you go into these ancient sites and you end up solving a lot of puzzles. There's a lot of somehow magic doors opening because you put something on a pedestal from ancient civilizations. Wondering how everybody thought about that kind of part of the game. I, for one, generally enjoyed it. I think sometimes when games do those kinds of puzzles, and that's something it does have in common with like an Uncharted, those kind of puzzle pauses. Sometimes the puzzles can feel pretty rote. I thought that they were generally pretty interesting here. There's like that whole large sequence where you were literally smelting keys, and I thought that was really fun. But yeah, curious what other people think. Go ahead, Wee Demon.
Yeah, I thought the puzzling and the tomb raidering was pretty decent. The only problem I had was whenever you had what's her face with you, Gina, I think it
Gina.
was. Yeah, she kind of did a lot of the Atreus stuff of being like, "Hey, well, I wonder what this switch does." And like, give me a second to look around here, lady.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
she was. Oh, sorry.
yeah, that
Go
part
ahead.
you were talking about was pretty fun. I also liked the fountain puzzle in it was like a multi-stage puzzle in the Vatican. I
Yes,
thought that one
yes.
was pretty cool.
Yeah, there were a lot of them were pretty well designed and just kind of, I don't know, interesting, and they were like visually neat. There's like the one where you're playing almost a kind of board game thing first in like, this little version, then eventually you had to get actual people and move them around just like those game pieces. That part was a lot of fun. Yeah, Gina, in terms of that stuff, yeah, there's a little bit of that Atreus bit. For me, it was more not so much talking about the like solutions to the puzzles, but just she would like find the door to the next place, but I would be looking around for a second to find an artifact or some other hidden collectible, and she just wouldn't shut up and like, "Hey, we should go here. Hey, let's leave. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Can you give me 2 seconds, Gina, to just pick something up on my map, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Jedi Moss."
Yeah, yeah, that would probably be my only major complaint about the game is yeah they do the Atreus thing and that's it's a little annoying and again I wish games would make a verbosity slider about that stuff and where that's you don't have to have that as often but yeah, I generally really like the puzzles. I do like the Vatican puzzles the most. I think it's in because mostly because it's so interesting on how they use, Jesus Christ and like all the Christ imagery as like part of that. And that is something that Indiana Jones has done a lot of and remembering things like, Last Crusade is definitely focused on that. And that's a very cool thing, actually drawing from actual bits of history as part of the puzzle solving. That's fun.
Is a little bit of a side note. Pretty surprised how much Jesus was in the game, right? Like, obviously, some of the Indiana Jones movies do that a lot. Not recent ones. They kind of try to hide away from that. They'll talk about it quite as much. And this one's just all, yeah, there's very, a lot of Christian mythology and other symbolism and stuff in it. Go ahead, Inufe.
The puzzles are pretty good. I didn't think she was as bad as Atreus was. I thought that was really bad. I remember you'd look at something for about 10 seconds. She would also was really buggy for me half the time and repeat a lot of dialogue about things that we weren't doing. Like, or I heard like maybe an hour ago, she would start saying again. So like she would get puzzles mixed up, and that was a weird bug that I had. Which surprising to say, this game was a little bit buggy with things like that. But yeah, I think overall some of the puzzles were good. There was also some good puzzles in the side quests, which were completely kind of skippable. Even that if you didn't go pay attention to them, I thought that they were pretty good, and I thought they probably should have incorporated those into the main story.
Yeah, yeah. I think, I think those are good points. I do like Gina in general, and yeah, I don't think the Atreus. This I get it wasn't as bad as that. I was getting that bug a lot though that you were talking about with her just suddenly repeating very old dialogue from that she already said earlier. I'm like, that's an interesting bug. Don't normally hear that one in a video game. Wonder what happened there. Go ahead, Adam.
I was just gonna say, y'all too mean to Gina. She's cool, although she was basically Marion.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about characters probably next year, but like aside from the Trey stuff, I love Gina. I thought she's a fantastic character. But yeah, let's talk about story, characters, some of that stuff next. Jedi Moss, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick on the bug thing. I think in general with the bugs in this game, it's nothing. I never really encountered anything game breaking, but it's a lot of really odd bugs that you don't really see in a lot of AAA games. It's like really unusual ones. Like I remember there was one early on, of course, with Marcus Brody in the college where suddenly his arms wouldn't move, and so he just kept walking around with his arms straight in the T pose, and I thought that was very funny to look at. It's a lot of weird little things like that where it's like, oh, it's weird that that didn't get picked up on.
Shawn, go ahead.
Yeah, just while we're still sort of in the puzzle solving and exploration section, I did think they were all overall pretty good. Like I didn't love a lot of the puzzle solving, but I thought it was I enjoyed it more than I didn't, I guess is a good way to put it. I forget which section was this, the Vatican, where there's a lot of like fire stuff going on and everything. I think that's Vatican.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't love some of the stuff in there. I thought that was a little hit or miss, but then yeah, some of the Vatican puzzles are pretty cool. And I thought some of the later ones too, even as simple as they are, I do like all the light stuff that happens in Giza and everything. That was all very fun. And I think the when you actually are doing the exploring, like I mentioned earlier, the more Tomb Raider side of the game of actually going through the areas, I thought that was all just a blast. And some of those moments are very, very fun, like the area where you have to throw a spear at specific things to then have a grapple point for Indy's whip. I thought that was all very fun, even if it is a bit linear and a bit scripted. It was just like a cool thing for the character to be doing, and maybe something that is more video game appropriate than movie appropriate. I thought that was a good thing for them to pull off there.
Yeah, I think as an example of them getting maybe the first person platforming pretty well, and I'm kind of a sicko for first person platforming. I love that stuff. And they use some tricks like white paint and whatnot to help there. It doesn't bother me at all. I generally enjoy kind of jumping around, grabbing ledges, using my whip just to kind of get around. But kind of I think the other big key to the success here is just nailing that Indiana Jones vibe in terms of the story and the characters. It really does feel like an Indiana Jones story. It's a very good cast. Like, you have some familiar faces, Indiana Jones, of course, and a fantastic job done there. Somebody help me out. I always blank on his name for some reason.
Troy Baker.
Thank you very much, anyways. Troy Baker absolutely killed it doing that. But like so the new characters here, Gina, we talked about. Gina is fantastic. Honestly, like maybe the best indie girl that I can think of. Voss was a very good villain, just kind of an interesting weirdo, right? Even some of the smaller characters like Father Antonio, I thought was very likable, a lot of fun. It was fun to see Marcus Brody kind of come back too. So yeah, that part of it worked really well for me. Go ahead, Jedi.
I mean, yeah, I think it's probably not too far of a stretch to say it's probably the best Indiana Jones story since at least Last Crusade, since those original films. Like, I think it's definitely better than anything in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So, like, yeah, it's a very well written Indiana Jones adventure, and I think the fact that Troy Baker, like, he gets down the inflections of Harrison Ford so well that I was, and you forget too that like he did that a lot in when Harrison Ford was young. It's kind of the difficulties of him coming back to do Indiana Jones today is that he's so old now he can't do those types of inflections anymore. So the fact that that Trey Baker could go out and do all those mannerisms and it pulled them off so well, yeah, just a fantastic performance by him.
He was so good at doing the Indiana Jones mumbling. That was an important part of it to me. I never even realized it myself until because it's a first person game, so you kind of have to have the character talk to himself a lot. Indiana Jones does do some of that, and every time he did, I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what that should sound like. And you're right, because Dial Destiny had the extended opening sequence of young Indiana Jones, so it's of course de-aged with CG, but still, 80-year-old Harrison Ford's voice, and it's like, oh, that doesn't seem quite right. This felt more authentic than that. Go ahead, Wee Demon.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Troy Baker did really good job. The only thing that kind of bugged me, and maybe this is just because I I I guess I know old Harrison Ford more, but he's not grumpy enough. You know what I mean?
Grumpy, yeah, I guess I could see it. Maybe some movies more so than others, but yeah, he could be a bit more of a grump. There's a little bit of that, especially early on with the relationship with Gina, where he's a little bit kind of keeping her at arm's length and a little bit off-putting. Um, but yeah, part of me, yeah, I know what you mean. Part of me is like, okay, am I thinking of Harrison Ford, or am I thinking, like Harrison Ford on, talk shows, or am I thinking of Indiana Jones?
Yeah, I there were several times where Indy would get like he would start figuring something out and he would get like excited like a little kid almost. And I'm like, that's not Harrison Ford. It sure looks like Harrison Ford and it sure shit sounds like Harrison Ford, but that's kind of weird.
Jedi Moss, what do you think?
I think the other cool thing too is that they do take a lot of effort to address, sort of the weird tomb raiding aspect of it. Is he stealing people's cultures? And the game makes it extremely clear, like, no, he's not really doing that. And actually, there's an interesting storyline, of course, with the fellow archaeologist that you encounter multiple times in the game, and
The
you're
old English
risking.
guy?
Yeah, the old English guy with
Yeah.
his apprentice, and he had to go out and find his apprentice numerous times. And there's a line in the game where the apprentice is like, "I want to grow up to be like Indiana Jones," and the English guy is like, "Nah, that guy's like a grave robber. Why would you want to be that guy?" And like you can kind of see like Indy's face kind of be a little bit hurt by that.
A
Um,
little meta there, huh?
yeah, where he's like, no, he doesn't really view himself like that. Like I said, he's not a killer. He's not interested in killing people so much. He just wants to, find the artifact and, oftentimes just give it to the right people who will display it correctly for that culture. So I thought that was a neat way of addressing that issue in the game. On top of the fact that I think a lot of the dialogue in general is just very funny. Like a lot of the dialogue, for example, there's the one that Indy has where he's like, Nazi shouldn't be trusted with money as he's stealing their money. I
Yeah,
thought that's
I do love
it's a
that.
very funny line.
Right. Yeah. So he's got, I forget what exactly he says, but he basically says it's always morally correct to steal from a Nazi or a fascist, right? Whatever it is. I love that. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I think the characters are all absolutely fantastic and were the thing that when I wasn't having a great time with the gameplay certainly kept me going because I kind of just wanted to spend more time with everyone. Like we said, Troy Baker as Indy, he does nail it. While I was playing this game, it was on one of our days off. I forget which one, but like I happened to turn on the TV and there was an Indiana Jones movie marathon going. And I was like, huh, you know what? This is a good opportunity. I'll just toss this on in the background while I do some other stuff before I play the game later. And then I went over to the game, and no, like he does nail at the very least like Raiders Indy. I think he was fantastic at that. And then yeah, Gina is a fantastic character as well. And it's been mentioned a little bit, but I love the moments that they have together of like for example when they're getting to know each other and they don't have much of a dynamic yet. And so she's like, "Oh, I get it. So you're a grave robber." He's like, "I'm not a grave robber. I don't like," and they like mumbles off, and she's like, "Oh, okay, touchy subject." And those interactions throughout the game are so well done and so well voice acted. And like you said, Voss is a fantastic villain. I forget his name, but the giant guy who like is
Yes.
it's a rivalry kind of thing going on there. He was fantastic as well. I just thought everyone in this game was really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Gina so much. I even like kind of like the dynamic of Indy so much. I almost wish that they hadn't made Marion the kind of canon Indiana Jones one true love thing. And I like Marion fine too. But yeah, I don't know. Like this relationship, like this actually feels better in some ways to me. Well, least of all because there isn't that weird age gap that they talk about with Indy and Marion. Go ahead, Inufe.
think all the characters were excellent. The big guy, I think his name's Locus, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah. I thought I thought he was going to end up being kind of like
Or
the
loaded.
chief from Resident Evil 4, like in the very beginning. I thought he was going to be like the first big bad guy, but he kind of, he turns. You find out that he turns. Spoilers, turns good there. I also my favorite line, I think, is when he retorts back and he says, and Voss is talking. He says, "Well, at least I'm not a Nazi, right?"
Hmm.
That was probably my favorite line. He did such an excellent job. Like you said, he gets the mumbling down and like his mannerisms and just the way he accents every single word that he says. Like, and I think I played half the game with my wife watching, and she didn't even know it wasn't him.
Oh, wow.
Like half until I told her, and yeah, it was excellent. And I think there was an article today where Harrison Ford said, "You don't need AI to like figure out who I am. Like Troy Baker just did it. Like you don't need that kind of stuff."
Right.
So
It's
even
it's
he
so
acknowledged
annoying.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
imagine if we had a group of people who were trained to act like certain people, right? Imagine if we had that instead of weird computer AI voice Luke Skywalker ruining Disney Plus or whatever. Anything else you need to say?
No, I think all the characters were excellent. I think it was. I mean, the cast was just so spot on for everything in Indiana Jones you could want.
Adam, go ahead.
One, the confessional scene was super funny.
Oh, right.
So funny.
God, that's right. When he's the priest, I loved him
Yeah.
gallivanting as a priest a lot in general.
It
Actually,
was also my favorite outfit. Two, I thought this story had a really cool religious artifact MacGuffin at the end.
yeah, we'll talk about spoilers kind of at the end here, but yeah, we'll get to that too. It's interesting because the Great Circle itself was a bit more of a nebulous maybe MacGuffin, and then there's it's kind of a more interesting one there. Go ahead, Jedi Moss.
Yeah, just real quick, R.I.P. Tony Todd. I think this was one of his final performances before he passed away. So it's a good performance by him. So I just wanted to shout that out.
We Demon, was there anything else you wanted to say? Saw you were off mute there for a bit.
Jedi just said it. I just wanted to say R.I.P. Tony Todd.
Ah,
Was a
all
big
right
fan
then.
of his, and bittersweet to see him in this, but nice to see him anyway.
All right. So we had a couple of text submissions sent in for people who couldn't join the live discussion. Let's read some of those right now. Bike and Bruce said, "My only comment is running into one bug that cost me a day's worth of progress and another progress block. Where in the caves in the river area, Indy would not grab the vine, so I had to restart. But despite that, I enjoyed the game. I was a major I was a history major, so I appreciated the relics and such. Right? Yeah, so much of the Indiana Jones stuff can be made up. But there is some actual fun history stuff going on here too. Even like some of the historical legends, the stuff about Edemic, right? And working in the Tower of Babel and stuff like that was neat. My bugs were definitely more silly and less game breaking. My brother had a weird one that just sort of skipped over the first big boss fight, the one that happens at the end of the Vatican. So that was kind of a weird thing. He says I just had to watch it on YouTube. Yeah, I'm curious if anyone else had any kind of more nefarious bugs or anything else they want to comment on Bikes and Brews message here. Go ahead, Shawn.
I had so many bugs and it was very annoying. I never had anything like set me back a huge amount, but I constantly had bugs that would set me back like 5 to 10 minutes. And, in the long run, that maybe doesn't feel like a lot, but when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, like in this play session, I probably lost a grand total of like half an hour because I kept getting I had the one where I could not climb a ledge for an inexplicable reason, and I would lose out on an escape sequence, or like something would be missing for a puzzle, and that was a really weird one because I'm like, how do I solve this puzzle? And I would like close the game and come back the next day. I'm like, well, this thing wasn't here. What the hell? There's a lot of that, but also, yeah, some of the sillier ones. I don't mind the sillier ones, but the one that really got me was the repeating audio bug. It's odd that so many of us had that happen. It
Yeah,
sounds
must
like
have
a
been
very
just a big
common one.
widespread problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I think I maybe had the worst of it where it was in the pyramid sequence, and throughout the entire sequence, they were repeating the line about finding like the dragon in the water, and they would repeat it like every 30 to 60 seconds randomly. It would just randomly go off. I think it's like when any other audio cue was being triggered, that would also get triggered. And so it was a really annoying thing to deal with, even through like checkpoint resets and stuff. It wasn't until I left that sequence entirely that it went away. So yeah, it is just bizarre how buggy and to a degree slightly unpolished the game is in areas, especially gameplay wise, because it looks so good and because it presentationally feels so polished. It's just a bit of an odd thing.
Go ahead, Jedi Moss.
Yeah, kind of somewhat related to that. I think the bugs aside, and there are quite a few of them, in general, the performance of the game is pretty good. Like, it's a pretty solid, like 60 frames per second throughout the entire thing. I played the game mostly on Xbox. Tinkered around a little bit with the PC version, but I thought in general, like, yeah, aside from the game breaking issues, the actual performance itself was pretty solid.
Adam, go ahead.
I was just going to say I played on an Xbox Series X and I thought it ran great. I didn't have any issues with bugs. It was 60 FPS by default. Looked beautiful. One of the best Series X games I've played.
Yeah, I also played it on Series X. I think I appreciated that there wasn't like, do you want performance or fidelity mode or whatever, right? The game just generally, at least, ran well, bugs aside, things like that. Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, just real quick while people are bringing up performance. I played on PC, and fun fact, if no one's watched the Digital Foundry video that Alex put out, you can actually just max out the settings on this game on basically every PC, and it looks gorgeous. And all you need to change is the texture pool setting on PC based on how much RAM is on your memory card. You just need to adjust that and the shadow quality and the hair quality, because those are the really expensive things. But other than that, yeah, you max out the lighting, you max out the shadows, and even on my little 3060 Ti, I was running at like 1440p max settings, 60 FPS, very smooth. It was a very like smooth experience all the way through. Like I said, despite the bugs and everything, like presentationally, fantastic.
Go ahead, Inufe.
Yeah, I played half of it on Series X and half of it on PC. So I could thank God for that the thing Microsoft made where you just seamlessly moves your save across.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I would call out that it ran really well on Series X in 60 frames a second with ray trace global illumination on the console was pretty impressive for how good that game looks. Also, the PC version runs really well as soon as you turn down that memory pool setting. So I've got high hopes now that because it still runs on a fork of Intech, so that Doom: The Dark Ages will run similarly just as good. So
Weed, go ahead. Weed. That's a funny short name. Weed Demon, go ahead.
You call me what you want.
All right.
Yeah. So I also played on PC, and my PC is not terrible, but it's not great. And I had it on full ultra settings, and it ran just fine. Looked really good. I didn't run into that many like bugs, maybe a little jank here and there, especially during like frantic fights. The only bug I ran into that I can remember is at one point, uh, I stopped being able to light the braziers with the
Weird.
torch. Like he would do the animation, but the brazier would stay unlit, and that persisted for some reason throughout the whole game. So it was kind of extra dark for me a lot, but it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Again, yeah, just a bunch of weird little bugs like that. It's nice to hear that it ran really good on like, a medium spec computer. We know we're getting a PS5 version. It makes me wonder if why wouldn't we get a Switch 2 version? Maybe we'll hear more about that soon-ish. Go ahead, Jedi Moss.
Yeah, so from what I understand about the PC version is that the main thing that they really want you to have is one of the graphics cards has to have like ray tracing capabilities. Because what's happening now is a lot of games are starting to build that into their production day one, and so that's why there's no option to turn it off because that's the only lighting that they have available.
Yeah, that just what Jedi said there is true. You need a minimum of a NVIDIA 20 series card because it requires you to have ray tracing. But the fact that you have to use at least basic ray tracing at all times means that it looks very good because it's built into the game. It means that it's also easy to hit 60 FPS. So yeah, technically they did a very good job with this.
We got another text submission from Beefhammer who says, I don't care what Mike and Jeff say, Crystal Skull is better than Dial of Destiny. Dial of Destiny is just consistently interesting, while Crystal Skull has a good first half and a second half that exists. Well, that's an interesting take, Beefhammer. Anyways, continues, I'm with Mike and I'm super positive on this game. I fully expected a Wolfenstein-like game or Uncharted game, obviously. So surprised it felt like a game that knew to focus on exploration with just a side of action in ways that's almost unique to Great Circle. I did not go into expecting to care about the story and characters because I'm not. It's not anything spectacular. But in a world where it's apparently impossible to capture the tone of the original trilogy, how the hell is it a 12-hour game where I could just fuck off from the main quest better than an official film like Crystal Skull that's directed by Steven Spielberg? So yeah, really enjoyed it. So play it if you haven't. Also, Gina, maybe my favorite leading lady from Indiana Jones. Loved her attitude. And great job by the character designer. Let's hear it for Italians, everybody. Not the fascist ones, but Regina and some of the other Italians. Yay. Jedi, go ahead.
So speaking of sort of the technical prowess, can we talk a bit about sort of the opening of this game? If we're gonna shift to story real quick, which is they do a not quite shot for shot, but pretty close to a shot for shot remake of the whole opening of Raiders. And I've heard a lot of divisive opinion about that. Some people really don't like it. I really like it because I think it serves as a good tutorial for the game. But I just kind of want to get other people's thoughts about what they thought about that opening segment.
Yeah, I took it definitely also as like, yeah, this is kind of a fun way to do a little tutorial, right? To be a little bit cheeky here and just recapture that iconic bit and make it playable. I thought it was fun and ultimately harmless. You're right. It definitely rubs some people the wrong way. Go ahead, Adam.
I thought it was not fun, but I appreciate that they did it. I thought it was cool.
We Demon, go ahead.
Yeah, I was pretty high on the no pun intended on the opening sequence. Uh it wasn't until like later when they kind of got a little too referential here and there that I kind of rolled my eyes. But I was fine with that whole opening tutorial thing. I thought it was pretty fun.
Shawn.
I thought the opening was a bit unnecessary, but sort of a neat flex. The fact that their tech is so good and the visuals are so good that it is approaching the movie in terms of visuals. It's a little uncanny valley, but it's also kind of neat to like interactively play through that sequence. It was cute, I thought.
I should have checked, but I wonder if they had to like put Alfred Molina in the credits now because he had to I assume he had to get paid for his likeness because that's just him in there. Go ahead, Inufe.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is did they have to pay Alfred Molina?
I
Is like
think
to
so,
get in
right?
there? Yeah. I don't know. I never checked. I also thought that maybe CG Alfred Molina is probably this is the best he's ever looked in a video game. Better than Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 2. But yeah, I thought the opening was very good. It's been a while since I've seen the first movie. So once it took me a second to figure out what they were actually doing, but I was like, okay, yes, this is exactly what they're doing. But I thought it was a neat way to kind of introduce you to the entire way the game is played.
So why don't we talk about spoilers here now? So if you don't want to hear that part of the conversation, you can maybe dip out now. But I guess I'm kind of curious what you think about the Great Circle MacGuffin as well. Because for a while it's a nice enough way to get people moving around, give them an excuse to go these different places. Um, and I understand why they didn't want to just call this video game Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark or something like that, right? They already had a different kind of arc before, anyways. But boy, it was really cool when you get that reveal of Noah's Ark, and it's just this giant ship, and even kind of ties into this whole, kind of weird teleportation magic that's going on with the Great Circle. Which at first I thought, all of the Indiana Jones mysticism stuff, at first, I'm always like, this seems like it's too far. And then I remind myself what's happened in Indiana Jones before. I'm like, I guess it's fine, actually. But, there's definitely some cool moments with the teleporting, especially that sequence of events where, first you're in the Himalayas, I believe, and then all of a sudden
Dude,
you're in Shanghai. That's so freaking cool.
Oh my god, dude, that sequence is incredible. I'm so happy I can talk about it somewhere now because I was gonna say screw the MacGuffin. I want to talk about this instead. I suppose it is related to the MacGuffin.
It's related. It's related.
But that entire sequence, that Himalayas level, everything you do there, you want your Uncharted? That's your Uncharted at the end there, where the ship is like going down the mountain and you have to like climb to the back of it. And then you teleport to Shanghai and you have to like hijack a plane and then you take it through the city and everything. Oh my God, that sequence was like my favorite thing I've done in a video game in a very long time. All of that related, just that is literally the thing where when I was on the fence on the game, I was like, nope, I gotta keep going. I gotta see there's more like this because that was freaking awesome. And yeah, even at the end when the MacGuffins do all come together and the thing with Noah's Ark and everything, maybe the final boss fight, not the greatest in the world, but the sequence I did think was very cool and very appropriate ending for Voss there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God, especially the Shanghai section, because like Shanghai is just so cool looking and it's very different, but it's also being torn apart by war. It all the classic Indiana Jones stuff generally takes place pre-war, as does this, but it's not pre-war everywhere. All right, like Japan and China are already going at it, so seeing Indiana Jones thrown into the middle of that was just very dramatic and very interesting. Go ahead, Jedi Moss.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard from a lot of people that I think that sequence in particular is the sequence where people who are maybe mixed on the game before, like, oh no, this is actually really good now, because it is like once you get sort of out of Giza, and into that whole sequence, and this is kind of nonstop, fight or flight action sequences up until when you finally get over to the jungle. It's a fantastic like whole sequence there. And so I like the Great Circle. It makes sense, once you get past melting phases in the first movie, the mysticism, you kind of have to accept that there's going to be some weird mysticism in an Indiana Jones thing at some point. So I thought it was appropriate enough for that. One other thing too I want to mention is the writing of Nazis in general. Of course, that's one of the big strengths of machine games. Is like they're really good at writing Nazis. There's that great line that Voss has about how easy it is to manipulate insecure men, which is a very funny line, and it's a very good line.
Mm-hmm. Adam, go ahead.
Agreed on Shanghai. Super cool. I was actually kind of bummed we didn't get an open zone area in Shanghai, but it makes sense why that wouldn't work. The MacGuffin was big, stupid, and I loved it.
We Demon, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out the whole the Shanghai sequence, in particular when you get in the plane and you get on the guns, and it sure seems very hard, if not impossible, to not shoot that tail
I
so
know.
you can say the line. I thought that was pretty good.
I know. I was thinking that same thing the entire time. Sorry, son. They got us, right? Like, how can I not shoot this thing? Gosh, yeah. Some of the visuals of the finale were great. I mean, there's that moment where all the trains are pulling out the Lost Ark, and there's the Nazi banners on it. I'm just like, whoa, this is some wild imagery. If this was an actual Indiana Jones movie, people would be freaking out about how that was one of the coolest looking scenes ever. Go ahead, Inufe.
Yeah, I thought the MacGuffin part and the realization of what the Great Circle actually was at the end was awesome. Because the whole time I'm like, what are they talking about, a Great Circle? And I was like, oh, okay, yep, got it. The other part I thought was really cool when Locust, that snake that you just fight the entire time, he just kind of wrestles it and snaps its neck. It's like, I guess it can't snap its neck because there's no bones in a snake, but it just kills it. I thought that part was pretty awesome. But yeah, I think just leading up to there and that entire sequence right there, I thought broke it up pretty well because I was getting afraid that once you were going to leave Giza, that it was just going to be another tiny little thing to like take you to the last open zone. But it was that whole kind of go, go, go sequence, and it broke up that pace very well, I thought.
Somebody kind of mentioned the final boss fight, and I thematically is really cool because there's this storm happening on the arc, and the first part of it I was into, especially Voss is such a freaking nerd, So of course he's gonna like, he's a weeb also, and he's like got he knows karate. So you have to fight him with that. I thought that was exciting. There was the part where you're like both dangling off a plank, and it looks interesting. I had no idea what the game really wanted me to do there for a while. It took like 6 or so tries for me to figure out how I was actually supposed to fight Voss like that. So that part of it was maybe a little bit awkward, but still, the finale in general worked really well for me. Again, the story kind of coming together there, and like a little bit of I don't know if I'd call it sequel bait, but it seems like the door is open and we could get more of it. So it's kind of my last question here as we get ready to wrap up. Is do you want more of this like same kind of game from this same team? And what did you generally think? Indiana Jones in the Great Circle. It's hard not to say Fantastic Circle now. Thank you, Jeff. Any other final thoughts? Go ahead. Jedi Moss. Ooh, what did my lights turn off? Oh, they're back. Okay. Well, what's going we're back after a slight technical hiccup. My power went out for a second, but we're here. But yes, I was eliciting. What's the word? I wanted to get everybody's final thoughts here on the Great Circle. If you want a sequel, all that other stuff, Jedi must go ahead.
Yeah, before we were so rudely interrupted, I was gonna say, like, not only do I want more Indiana Jones games, this is the only form of Indiana Jones I want from now on. Like, I think it's clear that, like, Harrison Ford is too old to do it now. There's really no one else who can really do Indiana Jones in the movie form. So why not just put him in a video game now and have him meet the eternally young Harrison Ford? And you got Troy Baker. If you can get him for another 10 years of Harrison Ford roles for an Indiana Jones game, then yeah, I would love to have more of that. That's the only way I want to experience Indiana Jones.
Yeah, boy. I mean, me. Theme park stuff too, please. But yeah, totally understand that. And that's one of the great things about kind of video games here is that it's easier than for a movie to just do an old franchise again like this and have it feel authentic. Go ahead, Wee Demon.
Yeah, I was not super up on the game in general. I think that the narrative part and the Indiana Jonesness of the whole thing was fantastic. Like by far the most successful thing in this game. And I think this is definitely a good foundation that if they can build on like the combat and all of the gameplay stuff, that yeah, I would absolutely love to see more of this.
Adam JC.
I'd be fine.
GC. Wrong letter.
Close enough. I'd be fine with the sequel. I do think the achieved so many other goals and hit so many of those Indiana Jones beats in the game that if this just had to be the Indiana Jones game going forward, that'd be cool too.
Hey, Couchlocked, I see that you joined. I don't know if you had something you wanted to say here as we wrap up. If you wanted to give real quick general thoughts, you may go ahead.
Hey, I don't know if y'all can hear me, but dang, Mike, thanks for letting me on. I love this fucking game. It's chill. I'm really hoping that people pick it up when it comes to PS. I was playing it on Game Pass, and anyway, I just really enjoyed the stream, and thanks for letting me on here, man. I'm gonna get out of here now. Thanks.
Thank you, Couchlock. Appreciate it. You have a good one. All right, Edith Faye, go ahead.
Yeah, I love the game. Honestly, probably in my top 5 for last year. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I hope they do continue to make sequels, which it sounds like it did pretty well for them so far. But we'll see how it does when it comes to PlayStation. I don't know what else I'd really ask.
But did the power demons get you
Yeah.
too?
No, children demons. Yeah, I don't know what else I'd ask for at a sequel. I think they kind of nailed everything. I mean, maybe some little addition to the combat, but that's it.
Shawn, it's funny because you were messaging like the Game Mess group here on Discord when you first started, and you seemed like you absolutely hated the game, but you did come around to it quite a bit at least, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like I mentioned, it's because of that. I think we can all agree slower start, regardless of whether or not you like what they were doing there in the beginning. It just starts off, a bit more mellow than maybe I was expecting. And once I got past that, though, I ended up really liking the game. I'm not completely in love with it, but Now that I'm viewing it as, like we mentioned, they're sort of setting up for a sequel potentially. I definitely think that this went well enough that they should get to do a sequel at least. I really want to see what they do next with Indy, what Machine Games has up their sleeves, because I think this game ended up being maybe a little rough in areas like we mentioned with bugs and stuff and some uneven pacing. But I think in general, it was pretty fun, and I ended up having a really fun time with it. I think this is kind of the length that I want most single player campaigns to be. I think I clocked in what would have shown up in Xbox app, I think around like 12 hours for me, I think, since I did kind of just mainline everything. And that was enjoyable. And I was mentioning during the technical difficulties here, I was mentioning to everyone, now that I kind of know what the game is and have a better expectation of it, I do actually want to go back to some areas of the game and try out the things that were kind of kicking around the back of my head to try out. And I just didn't want to do it at the time because I wanted to progress the story. It's grown on me a lot, like you said here. And yeah, I'm glad I stuck with it because I think it's very fun.
Yeah, I did really enjoy my time with it. I don't think it's like a 9 out of 10 kind of game for me, but to me, it's a very good 8 out of 10 or 8.5 out of 10. And it really did just nail giving me those Indiana Jones vibes that I've been craving and got a little bit of from Dial of Destiny, but otherwise have been really missing from my life in a big way unless I go watch the classic movies or go to Disneyland or Disney World or something like that. So I think they did a great job. I could totally see the sequel being like, the Uncharted 2 moment. Not necessarily, the Uncharted comparison, but it's just that you have a good idea for the first one here, and then the sequel really brings it all together in even more impressive way. So I hope that they do get the opportunity to do a follow up here. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me in the Game Mess Game Club. To everybody in the Game Mess, everybody watching us discuss this, we have a poll that, as of right now, is wrapping up tomorrow for our next game. So we're going to find out what that is soon. We are voting between Sly Cooper, the Thievius Raccoonus, Outer Wilds, and Doom Eternal. So excited to see what we're going to be playing next. And until then, this has been the Game Mess Game Club. You all take care. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.